Well, for many people, the world's problems seem too big and too hard to face. Our guest today comes to us from the front lines of Global Compassion Ministry. Dave Donaldson started Convoy of Hope in 1994, determined to feed the hungry. Millions of lives have been changed as a result. The stories and the invitation are here in this book, The Compassion Revolution. Dave, we are thrilled to have you with us from Washington, D.C.
It's a pleasure to be here, to be the thorn among the roses.
Hawk fan or Flyer fan?
Neither.
Well,
Sorry.
I have had a concussion though. It was a body check from my sister, but
You qualify today,
Okay.
Dave. You qualify. Now, you have a marvelous personal story of how both your mom and dad are at the core of what has made you a compassion revolutionary.
Well, in 1969, my parents were pastoring a church on the West Coast. And as I mentioned before we came out, we were all in the car getting ready to drive off to a meeting. The babysitter was late, and my dad was about to take off. He looked in his rearview mirror, and the babysitter arrived. We piled out of the car. But moments later, as my parents drove off...
The children went with the babysitter.
That's right, yes.
And your parents left.
As they drove off, minutes later, they were hit head-on by a drunk driver. And so my dad was killed instantly. Mother survived, but they literally had to pin her body back together again. And I'll never forget that day when we visited her at the hospital the first time. And we peered through the glass, and she was in there, and she was so beaten up and broken, we couldn't even recognize her. In fact, when she spoke my brother's name, he was standing next to me. He collapsed to the ground because of the trauma. So there we were, 4 kids, young kids wondering what's going to happen next. And I recall laying awake many nights saying, where are we going to go? Who's going to take us in? And
How old were you?
I was 9, 9 years of age.
And the other children?
Older brother 12, 11, and then a younger sister 6. But my grandmother, she said, God is a father to the fatherless, and he's going to take care of you. And I said, Gram, how can God be my father when he's in heaven? And she said, God will accomplish his promise through his people, and he did.
6 months you were without your mom.
6 months. 6 months laid up in the hospital. And this family, the Davises, that didn't have a lot. In fact, in the book, I show a picture of their trailer. And they took us in, and I'll never forget that day when we walked up to this trailer, and I was clutching my pillow in one hand and my luggage in the other, and wondering, would this just be another stop along the way? And how long will they keep us? And as I approached that door, bent over, fearful, the door swung open, and there Bill Davis stood. And he had this warm, inviting smile, and he gave me a big hug, and he said, you are with family, and this is your home.
I have to show the picture where 10 people lived. This is, can you see this? This is the Davises' mobile home. They surely didn't have room for this.
They had 2 children. And in fact, Levada Davis, when I asked her to send some photos, she affixed a note. And I put the note in the book, and it's moving. But the bottom line is this, and that's why one of the chapters is simply called With, the 4-letter word that changed my life. Because the Davises, they were not only willing to share their space, but they're willing to be with us. To accept that into their home, our sorrow, our pain, our struggles, and that's what compassion means. It literally means to suffer with.
And that's where you really see, well, a lot of the times, communities really coming together when there is a tragedy, when there is a need. In fact, I've heard statistics that even in this last economic downturn, a lot of donations actually went up. People somehow connected with that and wanted to come around others who were suffering.
It is, and that's the compassion revolution that I talk about in the book. And you're right, why we can get so overwhelmed with the problems that it paralyzes us from doing anything. But we have the answers. God has given us not only the hope, but the answers to meet every need in this world. And so this book is inspirational. At times it's humorous, but it's practical. We can meet every need that this world has.
And so why go on and take on what the Davises showed you? Why follow that pattern that they had shown you so early in your life?
Because it was patterned for us through Jesus. You think about it, Jesus, he could have just come down here for a short-term missions trip, like a long Easter weekend, die on the cross, arise from the grave, but he came here for 33 years to live and to show us how to live, to be with us and to model that. And so he showed us how to be with so that we could be with, others. And that's the revolution. And if I can just insert this story, because it keeps on multiplying when you show compassion. Last year, my wife and I, we decided we were going to take in a young lady who was in the foster care system, didn't have a home. She was getting shuffled from home to home. And that day arrived, and I talk about it in my book, when she arrived at our house. And we peered out the glass as she walked up, and she was bent over. I'm sure she was scared. And she was holding her pillow in one hand and her bags in the other. And as she walked up to our home, I swung the door open, and I gave her a warm, inviting smile that was given to me almost 40 years ago. And as she entered our home, I gave her a big hug, and I said, "You are with family, and this is your home."
Wow. One of the most powerful things, Dave, in your book, along with this and compassion, is that you say a portion of what we have belongs to the poor.